Ab- Absolutely. Thank you so much for all of y'all's attendance this evening. It's wonderful. I know some of you, and I'm looking forward to getting to know the rest of you guys. We'll see you at the grocery store at Ace Hardware. So our topic for this evening is Map Your Neighborhood. This is your official Map Your Neighborhood kickoff party. This is something that we've got about a third of the island has done this, and we're looking to finish another third this year, 2023, and then more in the coming years. So a couple of quick Zoom ground rules. Remember, you're on video, so don't do anything too silly. And if you wouldn't mind keeping yourself on mute until you need to talk, just to keep background noises like telephones and barking dogs and to a minimum. You can use the chat box if you have a burning question and you want to ask it, pop it in the chat box. I'll ask Rita and Tyler to keep an eye on that chat box, bubble up something, interrupt me if it's time sensitive. If it's not time sensitive, we'll have plenty of time for Q&A at the end as well. So here's what we're going to cover for tonight, who we are. I'll introduce myself and Rita and Tyler, what we're preparing for, the types of natural disasters. I'll describe our partnership that we have between a nonprofit and the fire district and the city. And then we're going to talk about two big topics, will be the majority of the evening: neighborhood preparedness, and then we'll touch a little bit on personal preparedness. Really, those are going to be some teasers if you want to learn more. And then more ways that you guys can get involved if that is of interest to you. So who are we? As Dirk said, my name is Scott James. I'm the founder and current board chair of Bainbridge Repairs. Bainbridge Repairs is about 12 years old. I started this thing out of sustainable Bainbridge years and years ago, and it has grown slightly. So we are at about 700, closing in on 700 volunteers who are all background checked and trained. That team overall is watched over by our executive director, Lauren Bast, and our program director, our very own Tyler Heineman, who is on this call. You'll see on our website, bainbridgeprepares.org, lots and lots of detail, including an organizational chart that I'll show you in a few minutes. And that's got all of our teams on it. One of our teams in particular is run by Reed and Rita. Our very own Rita Ellsbury is on this call, and she, along with Reed Price from Senior Center fame, run what's called the Access and Functional Needs team. So Rita's sitting in on this one, as is Tyler, because they are also going to be Map Your Neighborhood facilitators. We have a group of about a dozen of us that have volunteered for neighborhoods when they say, hey, we would love to gather our neighbors together, either on Zoom or in person. We are the facilitator crew that will come out. Okay, so here's in general, to set the stage, what we are talking about this evening: natural disasters. Earthquakes and tsunamis. We're talking about winter storms, which, as of a few years ago, we were not expecting to have a tornado touch down in Kitsap County, but we did. Related to winter storms is this flooding. We have another king tides coming up, like we had over the winter holidays. Got another one coming up in a couple of weeks, and related landslides. We also work on wildfires, thus the partnership with the fire district, and of course, pandemic and public health emergencies. You may have been part of our vaccine clinics that we've been running the last few years for COVID. We also are of support for hyper-local emergencies as well. We do not supplement 911. If you have an emergency, you should call 911. The primary mechanism when our team jumps into action is when 911 no longer works, because there's been a large enough earthquake that everything is down. And at that point, that's when the 700 trained citizens jump into action. Now, much of what we have built over the last 12 years revolves around the program that we're talking about tonight, Map Your Neighborhood. Map Your Neighborhood is a little bit of a misnomer. It should be called Map Your Street, because it's like you all have here. You've gathered just the folks in your immediate area, but we'll get into more detail on that in a moment. Now, why do we need Map Your Neighborhood? Why do we need Bainbridge Prepares? Well, really, it's a math equation, because we need to make the math work. Here's 3 pieces of data for you. as you all probably know, our island has around 25,000 people who live on it. At any given time, we've got 3 officers on the island, and we've got a dozen fire professionals on the island on duty. That math is a little daunting when you think about some of these other issues, like that more than half of them live off island, which means if the earthquake happens in the middle of the night, they're not only off duty, they are off the island completely. We've got a bridge that will most definitely become impassable after a large enough earthquake, and we've got a ferry service that's going to be disrupted as well. Combine that with 2 notes about medical is we don't have a hospital on the island, and even for the clinics, staff replacements can be jeopardized because a lot of those folks do not live on this island. What that means is that if you think of the small number of professional first responders that we have on the island at any given time, if you sever the bridge and you sever the ferry and that's all we have, those folks do not work to take care of 25,000 citizens. Now, what does work is if we do a judo move and we flip that on its head and we engage the citizenry, we engage the residents to say we can take care of each other. And that frees up the professionals to do what they do and work on the core infrastructure of the island and oversee everything. So that's how we make the math work, is it's normal folks like you and I, everybody on this call, working together for mutual aid, which then alleviates the pressure on our police officers, our fire officers, and our other professional responders at the city. So the answer was we created a partnership. We started with a nonprofit, Bainbridge Prepares. The fire department joined us literally at the very beginning, year 1, month 1. Former Chief Hank Turian gave us a green light and tremendous support for years. That's now taken over by this other handsome fellow that you see on the screen here from left to right. That is our new fire chief, former deputy chief, Jared Moravec, the dynamo that is Ann Lesage, and then some other guy. And we've built this based off of one of my favorite quotes from our former president, Harry Truman. It's amazing what you accomplish if you don't care who gets the credit. And this partnership does a lot of this. We do not care who gets the credit. We do a lot of horse trading between the 3 entities. And it's a neat enough model that just a few months ago, unexpectedly, we got awarded the Volunteer Organization of the Year by the International Association of Emergency Managers, 6,000 Ann Lesages from around the world. So that was kind of cool and unexpected to receive, but it does show that our unique organizational model works. So here's that promised organizational chart to set the stage before we jump into the Map Your Neighborhood program, which all of this it focuses on. Map Your Neighborhood is the foundation for all of this. Left to right, you'll see there's a bunch of teams that are under the city's guidelines that you would kind of expect to be there. The one I'd like to call your attention to is our flotilla. If you are a boat owner, whether that boat is in the water right now or on a trailer, and you want to join us, we would love to have you. That's one of our dynamic teams, and a reminder that we do live on an island. The middle column is you do pretty much what you would expect them to be doing, search and rescue, things like that, serious hero level stuff. And then on the far right side is us. It's the residents, it's the citizens, and this is the community nonprofit. This is where the majority of the teams are, and this is where our almost 700 folks serve on one or more of these teams. Map Your Neighborhood, there's a reason why it's up at the very top of that list. It is the foundation that we have built everything on. So the work that you all are doing this evening and that you all will be doing in conversations with each other in the coming weeks is super important, not just for yourselves, but really for our entire island community. So Map Your Neighborhood, as I said earlier, about a third of the island is already mapped. We'd like to push through to the second third this year. And frankly, if we ever get to the final third, I'll be thrilled and surprised, because those are mostly folks that you can't get their attention no matter what you do. We just can't find the mechanism to get in front of them. But you all are here and I'm excited. So here's the purpose of the Map Your Neighborhood program. Dirk, correct me if I'm wrong, but you all should have received some flip charts like this. Is that correct? From Ann at the city?
Mark picked those up and yeah, everybody should have a copy.
There we go. Actually, I see Steve's holding his up right there. Okay, so this flip chart is your new best friend. It is going to sit underneath your bed, along with a couple other key items like a good pair of sturdy shoes, hard hat, things like that, some gloves. There's a reason for that. If the earthquake happens and it's the middle of the night, your brain will be flooded with adrenaline and you will not be thinking well. What I want you to remember is all I have to do is reach underneath my bed, pull out this flip chart, and it walks you through what the steps are that to go through to protect your loved ones and then to connect with your immediate neighbors and then beyond. The reason I would like you to have hard hat and sturdy shoes and pair of gloves underneath there with it is so I wrote a book on this subject called Prepared Neighborhoods. So I got to geek out with folks around the country on this. When we looked at what people were showing up at ERs post disaster, it was not damage from something heavy falling on them so much of the earthquake, it was cut glass. That was the number one thing. That's why I want you to have a good pair of gloves. That's why I want you to have a good pair of shoes. So the next time you wear out a pair of shoes, don't put them in the Salvation Army pile, put them underneath your bed. So the purpose of Map Your Neighborhood, it's to protect yourselves and your homes, and it's to go through this flip chart as a team. You are now officially a team. Congratulations. And I'd like you to record what skills and what stuff you have. So I always hear these fun stories when I talk to folks about this. They had no idea that 3 doors down was a retired structural engineer. Well, that person is really useful post-earthquake to be able to walk around the houses or the apartments in the neighborhood and point to what works and what doesn't work. When I did mine, I mean, and we've lived here forever, I had no idea that one of my longtime neighbors was a retired nurse. All I knew her as was as a professional stone cutter, right? She makes these really cool pieces of art with a gigantic stone saw. I didn't know that she could also save my life. So that was useful to know. You're also going to find out that you have specific items that you frankly do not need to have multiple of. If you have one chainsaw and somebody who knows how to use it without cutting off their kneecaps, great. Every house does not need a chainsaw. So that's part of this flip chart that we're going to ask you to do as your homework later. You're also going to use this to create a literal map of your street, thus the name Map Your Neighborhood. The things we want you to note on that map are hazards. Things like for us here on this island, it's propane tanks is the number one thing, but also water shutoffs. So we want you to not only know where yours are and to hang a tool near it to be able to shut that off, we want you to know where your neighbors are. Because you never know, the Jensens might be over in the city when the earthquake happens, and they're going to want the Smiths to run next door and shut off their propane so that they still have a house to come home to. So it's good to know not just for yourself, but also for your neighbors. You're also going to use this, the Map Your Neighborhood flip chart to document who has what special needs. So I might have an elderly parent that's living with me. I might have a special needs kiddo. I do have multiple dogs and cats. I would want my neighbors to know that so that they could take that into account. And then finally, the purpose of Map Your Neighborhood is to have a guide to go through and evaluate what's going on in the neighborhood post-earthquake, and then take those initial critical actions that are so important in that first hour. So before we get into some of those details, let's talk about what the immediate response is. So before we go to what the after earthquake response is, let's talk about the earthquake. What's the response? As you know, or as you should know, drop, cover, and hold. That is your immediate response. So literally, if the earthquake happened right now, what I would want to see on Zoom is everybody dropping immediately and hugging the desk or table that your computers are sitting on. You don't want to run outside. You don't want to go anywhere near windows. If you do have a big glass thing right here, I'd like you to lunge that way and then find a table to duck under. After the shaking stops, that's when you start on your 9-step Map Your Neighborhood checklist that you have there in front of you. While you are doing that, you should expect aftershocks. That is one that also, when I was writing the book, we studied, people were surprised that it wasn't a one and done with the initial earthquake. Oh, that it's shaking again. What's happening? Well, we want you to expect that. You should expect aftershocks. So let's talk about the 9 critical steps, and then we're going to pause for to see if there's any questions. These are the same that's in your handy dandy flip chart. And they are definitely in priority order. So first, we want you to check on your loved ones. So you do that by protecting yourself first. Reach underneath the bed, grab the items you've got stored there, and then go and check on your loved ones, whoever else happens to be in the house, friends or family. Knowing where your propane shutoff is and or your water shutoff are 2 very useful things, because you want to get to them fast, particularly propane. Once you do have those shut off, if you look on the back of your flip chart, there is an OK sign or there is a help sign. So what I want you to literally do is you're going to rip off at that time, you're going to rip off the back of your chart. You're going to get a piece of duct tape, a Band-Aid, a sticky note, whatever it might be, and put that on the outside of your front door. The reason for that is because in a few minutes, some of your neighbors are going to walk the neighborhood, and they're going to walk by and they're going to note which houses say okay on the front door versus they don't say anything versus they say help. And you're going to immediately respond as neighbors to the ones that don't have anything on the door or the ones that say help. After you post that sign, what Map Your Neighborhood best practices are is gather all of the fire extinguishers that you have in your home. You should have 1 per level of your house. And if you are not in immediate need of those fire extinguishers, your neighbors might be. So the thing to do is to bring that fire extinguisher out and set it on your front porch in front of that door. That way, if somebody is having a fire, it's not just the 1 or 2 or 3 fire extinguishers that home has or that apartment has. It's all of the neighborhoods. Again, you are working as a team. So you want to take advantage of the multiplication effect there. Step 7 is to then gather at a neighborhood gathering point. This is a place that you have agreed upon ahead of time. You've written a note in your flip chart where that is. It could be someone's house. It could be someone's front porch. It could just be that big oak tree right there. It could be the middle of the cul-de-sac. You all get to decide where that is going to be. But that's going to be where folks gather and organize themselves into response teams. You'll see a few different response teams in the flip chart. Probably the key one is that you are going to have some folks that are going to go around to look for those okay or help signs and respond. After they do that, what the professionals call a windshield survey, then you report back to the larger group and you say there's 3 front doors that do not have a sign on it at all, and there's 1 that says help on it. Let's go. And then you move in mass to go and to help those folks. You can do a divide and conquer if that's the best thing, or if you just have a single help sign up, you can all go there to focus on getting to that neighbor that has reported they need help. At that point, Map Your Neighborhood is done. At that point, you're probably a few hours post-earthquake, and your brain is starting to settle down a little bit. The adrenaline is starting to rub off a little bit. You're probably exhausted. You need to be making sure that you're drinking water and eating a snack bar as well as your neighbors. And at that point, your civic duty can kick in. So your neighborhood might get off scot-free. You might be just fine. And 2 streets over, they might be decimated. The place where you will find that out is at your local disaster hub. I'll show you a map of the hub locations in just a second. There's one within walking distance of every home on the island. It's where we want you to report to. And when you report there, we want you to bring information. You might be bringing information of all of our homes are okay. We are all okay. We had no injuries. Or you might say, we've got 2 injuries that need help. Or you might have a walking wounded person that you can bring with you to the hub where we have medical care provided. The reason what we want that information is all of that information from all the streets then bubbles up through the disaster hubs to Ann Lesage, our emergency manager at the city. and the rest of that executive team that are going to be making the decisions. They need to know what's happening out in the neighborhoods, and you all are the #1 source for that information. So before we get into some details about propane and utility safety, let's pause there for questions. I see something in the chat. Oh, yep, that's Tyler putting out some of the teams. Thank you, Tyler. Do we have any questions at this point before we go on? If so, you can unmute yourself and ask away.
At what point do we decide where our neighborhood gathering point is?
So in a meeting that we would like you all to have in the coming weeks, we're going to ask you to get together. It could either be through on Zoom or at someone's house with wine and cheese. We're going to ask you to go through that flip chart together and quite literally walk through it. And as you walk through it, there's places where you can record different aspects, including where that neighborhood gathering place is. The place you're going to spend the most time on there's where you do write the neighborhood gathering spot. But the one you're going to spend the most time on is where you are listing out your skills and stuff. This guy right here. Listing out all the skills that the different neighbors have, listing out all of the stuff that people have, the gear, the equipment. Part of what we're going to ask you to do is get together once a year and have an annual party where you touch base on this. Have a party for 3 hours, touch base on this for 20 minutes. It's a doomer of a topic. So I like to encourage people to do preparedness through parties. You already know it's a bummer of a topic, so let's have some fun with it in and around there. The reason we want you to have an annual party is because things change. You have new neighbors, you have neighbors that have moved away, you have a new elderly parent that has come to live with you. Somebody has a pair of twins, babies, that type of, or you have people that have come to some of our classes and have gotten trained and certified in medical care or psychological first aid. Those are the types of changes that you'll want to make note of on an annual basis. Let's see, let me look back at the chat. Another note from Tyler. Yes, thank you. Any other questions before we move on? Okay, away we go. Now, we touched a bit on propane. That's particularly important for our island. When I talk with other neighborhoods around the country, everybody has different things. We have a lot of propane. And we also, because we are an island and because we have a limited water table that we're dealing with, preserving water as fast as you can is also a good idea. Any water post-earthquake is suspect. If you have not immediately shut that off, you need to treat any other water as suspect. So water that is already in your hot water tank, terrific, it's there. But once the shaking starts and then stops, contaminants can make their way into the pipes, and at that point, you want to shut off your water as quickly as you can. Propane, you all probably know this, but it sinks and smells awful. So when you are first shutting off your propane, whether you can hear a hiss or not, whether you can smell eggs or not, you want to shut it off just to be safe. When you're turning it back on later, one, do so with some guidance and do so as a team, as a neighborhood team, so that you have multiple sets of ears, multiple noses, multiple sets of eyes looking to be able to do that safely. Okay, now I mentioned hubs earlier as this is where you go in your step 10. So Map Your Neighborhood was created by a woman, Dr. Luann Johnson. She made it while she was a state employee in Olympia. Yeah, so it's homegrown, it's Washington grown. I liked it well enough that I befriended Luann and then convinced her to be the editor of my book, which also then lets me make fun of her from time to time that Map Your Neighborhood should really be called Map Your Street. All of the hubs are surrounded by streets, and this is the second phase of what makes Bainbridge Prepares work. Map Your Neighborhood is the first fundamental layer, and then once Map Your Neighborhood, we've got a bunch of strong Map Your Neighborhood installations. Now disaster hubs work. Hubs are places that you're probably going to walk to naturally anyway. Like if you live way up north, you're going to walk towards Blodell because They've got big, wide open fields, and we know psychologically that's what humans want post-earthquake. They want to get away from big trees and buildings. It's also a place where you might naturally walk to look for information. Remember, at this point, your cell phone doesn't work and your landline doesn't work. And unless you have a satellite connection, you are not finding out what's going on. So walking someplace where we do have ham radio installations and we are creating a satellite-based mesh network, that's where you will have information. And remember, we want you to bring us information as well. So you can walk to the hub to find out what in the world is going on. We also want you to bring a report of this is the street I'm on, these are the people that we've got, and specifically, we need help in X, Y, or Z areas, or we can offer help in X, Y, or Z areas. The original idea behind the hubs was a place that we could go where one street could walk in and say, boy, we're fine, we're great, and we can absorb this many people in our homes temporarily. And another street walks in and says, we have lost everything. We are decimated. There's not a single home standing, and we don't know where we're sleeping tonight. And everybody's freaked out, and we can't get to our camping gear. That's where mutual aid, citizens taking care of citizens, happens. And this is what frees up our first responders and our professionals at the city and fire and police to do what they can do because they don't have to worry about and babysit us out in the neighborhoods. So you see all of the hubs that we've got kitted here, and this is the type of thing that you can expect there. You can expect medical care, targeted medical care, and then some sustenance for the injured folks. This is not where we want folks to show up and say, I'm sorry, but I didn't plan or put aside any food and I'm really hungry, but I'm not injured. No, we want you to take care of yourself and your neighborhood for that, plan ahead. But if you show up and you are injured, or if we go out to the hub and bring to the neighborhood and bring you in because you're injured, we've got sustenance stored there for folks. Same for temporary shelter. We have a psychological first aid team. In my mind, they sit right next to our medical reserve team where we've got all the doctors and nurses. We also have all the therapists and psychologists who are going to be just as mission critical when some of them are completely freaked out. Told is the technical term for what happens is your brain freaks out. One thing to note on this map is the reunification center, and that is the high school. So if you have kiddos, this is, and you are off island, this is where you will go once you get back on island, and your kiddos will be waiting for you. We have a child safety team that has all the principals sit on that. Peter, our superintendent from the school district, sits on that. If there is a youth-facing organization, they likely sit on that team. So if you do have kiddos, it's worth looking at that team's webpage to look at the plan and the strategy that we've got set up for that. So next steps. I think you have maybe already identified a captain or two. That might be in the form of Dirk and Mark, if I'm correct. If not, you're going to want to identify a captain. I like dynamic duos. There's a reason why Rita has a teammate of Reed for the access and functional needs team. There's a reason why Tyler, as our program director, is counterpart to Lauren, our executive director. I'm a big believer in dynamic duos. So to me, two is always better than one. So your next step as a neighborhood team is to read through this pamphlet and fill it out, the flip chart. Again, that could be done via Zoom pretty easily. It could be done over wine and cheese. You're going to then collect all that data and make sure that everybody, your ideal, at the end of this process, your ideal thing is that everybody's list and everybody's map, everybody's flip chart is identical. Because again, you want more than one copy available to folks. So if you are a couple and you don't want a single copy, so the Jensens want a copy under each side of their bed, not just one flip chart, but under each side of the bed. What I'd like to see you do is in the coming weeks, as you gather that data, set a point sometime in the next 1 to 3 months and say, this is when we're going to get back together and review all of the information. We think we have this done. Have we forgotten anything? And then, as I said earlier, schedule an annual check-in meeting every 12 months. Once that is done, you should congratulate yourself, give everybody fist bumps. Well done. You are now officially mapped. Great job. There's some of you all might want to go further. If you are interested in things like classes for like Stop the Bleed with our fire department, or CERT, our CERT team, or our medical responder team. If you're interested in any of those types of classes or trainings, you can hear about them first at our monthly newsletter. So you can sign up at the website there, bainbridgeprepares.org. There's also a specific PDF that we created for family reunification. You can pull down a copy of it from the URL that you see here, the /individuals webpage. It's going to have things that you might not have thought about, like having a known meeting site on both sides of the water. One in Kitsap County over on the other side of the bridge, one in King County in downtown Seattle. So if you happen to be off the island for work, for shopping, for church, whatever it might be, you know that's where other family members would be. So take a look at that family reunification plan. And then a common ask is, when should we start buying stuff and what do we buy? And the short answer is do not buy stuff yet. Have your team meeting first, because what I don't want you to do is duplicate effort within, as Americans, we already have way too much stuff anyway, right? So before you go buy any more gear, find out what your neighbors have, because we will be living communally in the months following an earthquake. Life does not go back to normal. It becomes very local very quickly, and it stays local for a number of months. We will be cooking communally, cleaning up communally, and existing together in our individual streets. So before you buy a single item, I'd like to make sure you do your Map Your Neighborhood flip chart. Then at that point, you can go and look at the 3 checklists that we have on the website: a go bag, a get home bag, and a shelter in place list. The go bag is what you would want to keep in your garage in case you all need to get out of Dodge quick. Now, there's a lot of go bags are not a weird thing. Pilots use go bags. Military people use go bags. Frequent business travelers use go bags. It's just a set of stuff that you know you're going to need on a regular basis, and it's there and you can walk out the door quickly. I'd also like you to have a get home bag. If you spend a lot of time off island or at a place other than your home, so that could be a place you volunteer a lot. It could be a place that your workplace. I want you to have a get home bag there, and you can read what that list is, but it's things like a sensible pair of shoes. So I have a pair of dress shoes that I wear sometimes for work. I would not want to walk from Bremerton all the way back to Bainbridge Island in those dress shoes. I would very much like a good pair of hiking shoes. So whether you're wearing high heels or dress shoes, there's things like that that are in that get home bag. The shelter in place checklist is daunting. It is huge. It takes into account the fact that FEMA wants all of us to be what they call 2 weeks ready. That's 2 weeks of food, 2 weeks of water, 2 weeks of electrical supplies, 2 weeks of toilet paper, 2 weeks of everything. That you for sure have to talk to your neighbors before you look at that shelter in place kit, because that, again, you are living communally at that point. So while FEMA asks everybody in the country to be 2 weeks ready, I would like to give to you 2 additional things to think about. One, you have chosen to live on an island. So you might want to add a week or 2 to that, because not only do we live on an island with a bridge that almost assuredly will go down and a ferry service that will likely get disrupted, we are also the most hard pain in the butt to reach portion of our county. So even as out of region resources come into the county, within Kitsap County, we're going to be the last to receive them because we're the most difficult to get to because of said bridge that is not going to cooperate. So consider adding a couple of weeks for that. There's another thing I'd like you to consider, which is charity. So our island is like Mayberry, right? We are amazingly community minded. on Bainbridge Island. And our volunteer, there's a reason why we've almost got 700 volunteers. Our volunteer rate is absurd compared to the rest of the country. I think nationally it's something like 17%, and we are at 70%, 70. It's crazy how high our volunteer rate is. So the answer, the positive answer to an earthquake happens and your neighbor comes over and needs help is not to turn them away. Maybe people do that in other areas of the world. We don't do that. The answer is you bring them in. So to do that, think charitably minded, and maybe if you're financially able, add another couple of weeks worth of supplies to your stashes. Okay, quick note on beyond earthquake preparedness, and then we're going to open it back up for questions and answer. Show of hands, who is already on Nixle? Oh, not that many. Okay, so if you are not yet on Nixle, pull out your cell phone, text to this number, 888-777, text your zip code. It will automatically get you onto an automatic subscription. So when we have king tides and a road floods, you will get a note that says you can't go on this road right now. When we have a landslide that blocks a road, you'll get a note. There's only a few people that can send out these notes. Our emergency manager, Ann Lesage, our city manager, the police chief, the fire chief. That's about it. So these are important notices to get. It's not a spammy thing. If your phone cheeps and it's a Nixle alert, you got to pay attention to it because it's a big deal. Second is, you might already know this, but when you call 911, the weird way that our county works and the way the 911 stuff gets routed, you need to specify right away, tell the operator that you're on Bainbridge Island. Because otherwise it will send you to a different dispatch area. So know that, and also just know that while we've got some medical offices on this island, we do not have a 24/7 clinic, and they're really not designed for hardcore emergency care. So keep that in mind. 911 is the correct answer for practically everything. And then finally, because the fire department is one of our partners, I would get made fun of if I don't remind you. Test your smoke alarms, push the little button, make sure it screams at you, replace those batteries, and make sure you have a fire extinguisher on every floor. We already talked about why that's important for Map Your Neighborhood. You're going to go gather those fire extinguishers to put them out at your front door if you don't need them, because your neighbors might. So with that, I will open it up for questions and answers. We covered a lot of information in a short amount of time. And let me also, I see the chat, see if there's a question in there. Okay, more information from Tyler. Thank you for that. So let's open it up. Feel free to unmute yourself and let's ask questions.
In looking at the hub zone map, we are between Burke, Bainbridge Island Recreation Center, and Battle Point. So where do we belong? And I'll say that Burke's a lot easier to get to.
Yeah. I'm also one of those same people who could go either way. I'm on Manus Olson. So the rec center is going to be where we're going to go. Your street and mine. It's a much larger facility. I tend to think of it as a super hub because it's not just the Parks Department gave us not just the rec center, but Meadowmere was also kind enough to give us their parking lot and their professional kitchen. So we will be cooking meals out of that professional kitchen at the grill there. Again, communally living at large with all of our new best friends of our neighbors. So you all would walk into the rec center. If for whatever reason the rec center is not available, then yes, you could report over to Battle Point.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah,
and yes, so I see a question from Jeff in there about medical supplies available at hubs. Yes, so one of the things that we fundraise for is buying gear, and it's buying gear in mass. So we have what are called mass casualty bags, and we have our medical people trained on those bags. So those bags are stashed at each of the hubs. And in fact, Kobe also made a significant, the city made a significant financial commitment for kitting out those hubs as well. I would guess, Tyler, what do you think? What percentage of the hub's gear is medically minded? I'm going to guess 25 to 50%, and the rest is operational. What would you say? And you got to unmute yourself first as you're thinking. Oh, Annie's chewing. All right, so we'll just say we've got quite a bit
I'm
of
cogitating.
quite a bit of medical gear.
It's
at
hard
those
to
hubs.
put a number to it. We're still building out what's exactly going into those stashes. We're planning for simple, boo-boos, but that's something that we'd like to push back into the neighborhood, a concept you'll hear a lot.
Yeah, when
really
you get into the medical gear stuff, the hubs are really designed for things that can't be dealt with in the neighborhood. So if folks are what professionals call walking wounded, we mostly actually want those to be dealt with at the neighborhood level. To exhaust your own first aid kits first, and only if once those are exhausted, then come over to the hub and ask for additional medical support.
And if we can't treat a medical issue at the hub, the idea is that we have enough equipment to hopefully stabilize an injury until we can get a patient transported to a higher level of care. We have a disaster medical clinic that we plan to put up, and hopefully some form of transport to another higher level of service off island.
Other questions? Okay, well, so is it clear what your next step is? Your next step is to get together via Zoom or in person and fill out this flip chart together. So my neighborhood, it took us 45 minutes. It'll take anywhere between 30 to 90 minutes, depending on how social you guys are. And how much kibitzing you do in between topics, but it's a pretty straightforward set of conversations. And I can almost guarantee you that the night after you have that conversation, you will sleep better than you ever have before. Because one, you've made new friends. A lot of us in North America have great neighbors. We just don't really know them all that well. This is a great way to get to know them on a very important subject. And you're going to find out all these new skills that your neighbors have. And stuff that you don't need to buy because the neighbor already has it. So,
Scott, I imagine
yes,
most immediate homework would be at an individual level. We should all kind of go through the inventory list and write down, because we may have to think about it. Do I have this? Do I have that? And then once everybody's done that, we reconnect as a group and it'll go quicker, I imagine.
Yep, that's correct. So you come to the party with your list already filled out for yourself, your information already filled out for yourself, and then you can have group discussion about where should be our neighborhood gathering spot, or if we have an unusually large number of little kids in the neighborhood, where should we designate, this house is going to be where we stash all the little kids temporarily, and that type of those type of conversations. Other questions?
Yeah,
I'll mention, oh, go ahead, Dirk.
no, I mean, just on that point, people speak up since we're all here. If you have preferences, just let Mark and I know what you prefer for that session. If you want to do it this way by Zoom, or we want to try to coordinate and meet somewhere. Either way, but we'll follow up by email to look for dates.
Dirk, is this the sheet you're talking about?
Roger's holding up.
Can you
something.
see this? Is this the sheet you're talking about?
It's in the flip book, I think, right?
Oh, it's actually in the flip book. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that
Yeah, Roger, go to
get my
the
homework done.
go to the flip chart thing, and the
Yeah.
first blue tab says neighborhood gathering, or the yellow part says neighborhood skills and equipment inventory.
got it.
It looks like that.
Okay, all right.
This is where you'd
Well,
record your own skills and your own stuff, and then in the team meeting, in the neighborhood meeting, that's where you're also going to be writing down additional things. Here's an example of what you don't need to write down. For fire extinguisher, you would want to mark how many you have and what locations they are. Again, remember, your brain is flooded with adrenaline and you're not thinking well, okay? Or it's 3 a.m. and you're tired. So write it down here. Oh yes, I have a fire extinguisher in the kitchen and I've got another one in the upstairs bedroom. Great. You don't need to write that down for all of your neighbors. What might be useful is to write down is a running tally of what neighbors have fire extinguishers and how many you have. So you know a rough total of how many fire extinguishers in the neighborhood. Because again, statistically, the fires don't blanket every house immediately, right? They start small. And so if you can hit them with en masse with fire extinguishers, then you can prevent it from becoming a much larger secondary tragedy.
Thank you.